The life and sad ending of Kitty Wells. Kitty Wells was born on August 30, 1919. Was born Ellen Muriel Deason on 30 August 1919, one of 6 siblings, to Charles Cary Deason and his wife, Myrtle, in Nashville, Tennessee. She is one of the few well-known country performers to have been born in Nashville. Wells began singing as a child, learning guitar from her father, who was a brakeman on the Tennessee Central Railroad. Her father, Charles, and his brother were musicians, and her mother, Myrtle, was a gospel singer. As a teenager, Wells sang with her sisters, who performed under the name the Deason Sisters, on a local radio station beginning in 1936. At the age of 18, Wells married Johnnie Wright, a cabinetmaker who aspired to country music stardom, which he would eventually achieve as half of the duo, Johnnie and Jack. She was widowed 33 days before their 74th wedding anniversary when Johnnie died in 2011, aged 97. Kitty and Johnnie had 3 children, Ruby, Bobby, and Carol Sue, 8 grandchildren, 12 great-grandchildren, and 7 great-great-grandchildren. Through the ups and downs of her life, her career progressed as follows. Wells sang with Wright and his sister Louise Wright. The 3 toured as Johnnie Wright and the Harmony Girls. Soon Wright met Jack Anglin and they became the duo, Johnnie and Jack. Their band became known first as the Tennessee Hillbillies and then the Tennessee Mountain Boys. It was at this time Wells adopted Kitty Wells as her stage name. Johnnie Wright chose the name from a folk song called Sweet Kitty Wells. Wells would tour with the pair, occasionally performing backup vocals. Before Wells' rise to stardom with Honky Tonk Angels. On Louisiana Hayride, Wells performed with her husband's duo. Wells, however, did not sing on their records until signing with RCA Victor in 1949, releasing some of her first singles, including Death at the Bar and Don't Wait for the Last Minute to Pray, neither of which charted. While these early records gained some notice, promoters still weren't keen on promoting female singers, and therefore Wells was dropped from the label in 1950. In 1952, Paul Cohen, an executive at Decca Records, approached Wells to record It Wasn't God Who Made Honky Tonk Angels. Was an answer song to Hank Thompson's The Wild Side of Life and its lyrical treatment of seductive, wayward women. Wells' single retorted, "It's a shame that all the blame is on us women." The record's message was controversial at the time and was banned by many radio stations. NBC, in particular, was troubled by the lyric, "It brings back memories of when I was a trustful wife." Wells' slight alteration of trustful to trusting lifted the network ban on the song. It was temporarily banned from the Grand Ole Opry. Nevertheless, audiences couldn't get enough of it. The single took off during the summer of 1952 and sold more than 800,000 copies in its initial release. It was the first single by a female singer to peak at number 1 in the 8-year history of the country music chart, where it remained for 6 weeks. It Wasn't God Who Made Honky Tonk Angels also crossed over to Billboard's pop charts, hitting number 27. Thanks to her breakthrough, Wells received a membership to the Grand Ole Opry, which had originally banned the single. Her relentless efforts have helped her climb to the height of fame. In the spring of 1953, It Wasn't God Who Made Honky Tonk Angels was followed by Paying for That Backstreet Affair, a response to Webb Pierce's Backstreet Affair. The single reached number 6, helping to establish a lasting place at the top of the charts for Wells. Between 1953 and 1955, Wells was popular on the country charts and was the only female solo artist at the time to be able to maintain her success. In 1953, Wells had 2 top 10 hits with Hey Joe and Cheatin's A Sin. The next year, Wells partnered with country star Red Foley for the duet One by One, which peaked at number 1 on the Billboard Country chart and became her second chart topper. The song led to a string of hit singles from the duo within the next 2 decades. Including 1954's As Long as I Live, which peaked at number 3. As a solo artist in 1954, Wells had 2 major hits with the number 8 release Me and the top 15 hit Thou Shalt Not Steal. Record companies were reluctant to issue albums by the country's female artists until Wells proved that women could sell. She became the first female country singer to issue an LP, starting with 1956's Kitty Wells' Country Hit Parade. In 1957, which consisted of her biggest hits, Wells released her first studio album with Winner of Your Heart. Soon other female country singers released LPs in the late 1950s and early 1960s. Making Believe and Lonely Side of Town became chart toppers for Wells. However, not on Billboard magazine. Wells' later 1950s releases included Searching for Someone Like You, I Can't Stop Loving You, and Amigos Guitar, which she wrote with John D. Loudermilk. In 1957, Wells issued Winner of Your Heart. This was followed by a string of LPs released by Decca Records between 1957 and 1973. She also partnered with Webb Pierce the same year for 2 duet singles, including the top 10 hit Oh So Many Years. The duo didn't record together again until 1964 with the top 10 hit Finally. In 1959, Wells had 2 top 5 hits with Amigos Guitar and Mommy for a Day. Wells was later awarded a BMI award for writing Amigos Guitar. Although not known much for her songwriting, Wells has won 2 BMI awards, including one for Amigos Guitar. She has published more than 60 songs. Wells continued to put much of herself into her songs throughout her career, inspiring other female country singers to record risky material as well. Wells entered the 1960s on top with songs like Heartbreak USA and Day Into Night. Heartbreak USA peaked at number 1 on the Billboard Country chart and became her third and final number 1 hit. The follow-up, Day Into Night, was a top 10 hit the same year. Owen Bradley continues as Wells' producer in the 1960s. Bradley produced some of the biggest-selling country crossover singers of the time period. The well-known Nashville sound vocal group The Jordanaires can be heard backing Wells on her big country hit from 1961 Heartbreak USA. In the early 60s, Wells continued to have top 10 hits frequently. In 1962, Wells had 3 top 10 hits with Will Your Lawyer Talk to God, Unloved Wanted, and We Missed You. Beginning in 1964, Wells' albums began to chart the top country albums chart, starting with the LP Especially for You. Some of Wells' albums peaked within the top 10 on that chart. That same year, Wells' singles began to return to the top 10 with This White Circle on My Finger and Password, both of which peaked at number 7 on the Billboard Country chart. In 1965, Wells had her last top 10 hit with Meanwhile, Down at Joe's, and in 1966, Wells then had her final top 20 hit with It's All Over But the Crying, which peaked at number 14 on the country charts. During the late 1960s and 1970s, Wells managed to have a string of minor hits and remained a popular concert attraction. She continued with a string of top 40 hits nearly until the end of the decade with her last top 40 single, My Big Truck Drivin' Man. In 1968, Wells recorded a duet album with husband Johnnie Wright called Wells Stick Together. Wells also reunited with Red Foley at the end of the decade for a studio album. Her albums continued to chart the top country albums chart until 1969 with Guilty Street. Wells became the first female country star to have her own syndicated television show, with her husband in 1969, the Kitty Wells Johnnie Wright Family Show, which also featured appearances by their children, including actor Bobby Wright. However, the program could not compete against shows starring more contemporary male artists like Porter Wagoner and Bill Anderson and only ran for 1 year. Wells stayed under the Decca label until 1973. She released 3 studio albums in 1970 and 2 in 1971. In 1973, When Decca became MCA Records, Wells stayed with them for a short time before leaving the label. In 1974, she signed with Capricorn Records, a southern rock label of the era, and recorded a blues-flavored album entitled Forever Young, on which she was backed by members of the Allman Brothers Band and the Marshall Tucker Band. In 1976, Wells was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. In the late 1970s, Wells and their husband formed their own record label, Rebecca, and released several albums. In 1979, at age 60, she was back on the Billboard charts with I Thank You for the Roses. In 1987, she joined fellow Opry legends Brenda Lee and Loretta Lynn on K.D. Lang's Honky Tonk Angels medley, which was nominated for a Grammy Award in 1989. Wells' 1955 recording Making Believe was included in the soundtrack of the film Mississippi Burning. In 1991, Wells was awarded from the Grammy Awards a Lifetime Achievement Award. She, along with Johnny and Bobby, joined producers Randall Franks and Alan Autry for the In the Heat of the Night CD Christmas Times A Comin', performing Jingle Bells with the cast on the CD released on Sonlight and MGM UA for one of the most popular Christmas releases of 1991 and 1992 with Southern retailers. In 1993, Wells appeared on Dolly Parton, Loretta Lynn, and Tammy Wynette's collaboration Honky Tonk Angels, joining in on their recording of the title track. Wells remained a successful concert attraction at smaller venues throughout the country and Canada as late as the early 2000s. Wells and her singing partner husband of 63 years performed their final show together on the 31st of December 2000, at the Nashville Nightlife Theater. They had announced their retirement earlier that year. Wells was ranked number 15 on CMT's 40 Greatest Women of Country Music in 2002. An exhibit honoring Wells at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum in Nashville ran from August 2008 through June 2009. On 14 May 2008, It Wasn't God Who Made Honky Tonk Angels was added to the National Recording Registry at the Library of Congress, along with Roy Orbison's Oh, Pretty Woman. Kitty Wells died on 16 July 2012, in Madison, Tennessee, from complications of a stroke. She was 92. She is buried at Spring Hill Cemetery in Nashville, alongside her husband. On 25 June 2019, the New York Times Magazine listed Kitty Wells among hundreds of artists whose material was reportedly destroyed in the 2008 Universal fire.